How's that sound? All right, I'm going to ask our audience here to calm down a little bit. We have several with us live, and I want to welcome them and everybody who has joined us at home for our event today, which is called Amplify, the Voices of Our Black Neighbors. So thank you for coming. We're very fortunate that we are able to do this both virtually and in person, given the time frame that we're living in right now. So again, thank you very much for being here and welcome. I would also like to offer my thanks and appreciation on behalf of Open Table UCC to the Ottawa YMCA, who has offered the use of their building today for this event in the hope that we would have a nice gathering space where all feel comfortable, that's proximal to the downtown and people who would want to venture out. And it's just been very generous of them. So I'm Jen Swanson. I'm going to be sort of the discussion leader today. I'm a member of Open Table United Church of Christ, and we are grateful that you are here with us today. This event is part of a series of events that our church is pushing forward with. Part of a series of events that we're calling Acknowledge, Amplify, Act. Acknowledge meaning we need to acknowledge systemic racism and our part in it. We want to amplify black voices, and we want to act to implement both systemic and personal change. A few weeks ago, we held a vigil outside of our church, which was primarily looking at this acknowledge piece of it. It was a 24-hour vigil that had great reception and attendance throughout the community. And this event is the next step in that, that charge, that moving forward. What this is today is a conversation. Our speakers are here to share their experiences and their stories, and we are here to listen. What this is not is something political. This is not a time to challenge or to question people, or to call people out, to bash agencies or throw people under the bus. We're here to listen with an authentic and open heart to authentic stories shared by people who are willing to share them with us. So, sitting with me today is Mr. Dale Baker. Thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to start off the conversation with Dale by reflecting on, some of you may have seen a picture of Dale with a white bulldog. He looked like he was maybe going to pet it. And I think, knowing Dale, that picture speaks to who Dale is. And so I'd like for him to tell us maybe a little bit of the story behind that picture. And in doing that, tell us a little bit more about himself.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Yes, that picture, I've seen that picture, that bulldog. I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan. You know, I'm from South Georgia, and I drive by that dog, that statue, every day, nearly. And I wanted to have a picture with that dog. So I just happened one day to just pull over and ask, can I have a picture for the dog? And to rub a little bit of, that college rivalry into some of my friends. It really bothers them, because I've got a couple of texts about that already. But I'm from a little town, Naylor, Georgia. It's near Valdosta, Georgia. You probably have seen it. It's a very small town. A football, Wintersville. It's a laid-back kind of atmosphere town. So that's me.
So tell us a little bit more about what it was like growing up in the town that you said,
Naylor, Georgia.
Naylor, Georgia.
Yes. It was some rough times growing up in that little town, being black. There was a lot of racist stuff going on where there's people that would, me and my siblings, we had to walk in pairs. We had to go together in pairs. We couldn't walk down the highway because people would throw bottles, liquor bottles, at children. You know, we're talking 6, 7, years old, 4 years old, and that's what it was about. And got called names, very bad names all the time, um, even from going to walking to school every day. So it was no big deal. You had to have thick skin, you know, to deal with it, and just try to go every day without having to try not to get in some type of fight because somebody call your name or do something to, my brothers and sisters. But there were some great people. There were some great people that helped me and my family through these times. And I'm talking about white people because they got just as bad as we did for helping us. You understand? I mean, so it wasn't just, um, and that's what I'm trying to get across to a lot of people these days because there are some good people. There's some good people out there, white, black, no matter what. And I got to experience experience a lot of the good help that we got from people. Grown people stopping other men and stuff from hurting me or my sisters. There's some people that would jump in to stop that,
And so you're talking about walking to school with your
Yes.
siblings.
Yes.
What time frame is this? I don't think you have to tell us how old you are, Dale, but I would like to know, like, how long ago was this?
This was in the 1980s, 70s, where it was, it wasn't all the family. It was just a few of the, just uh, that were racist. I mean, that was just blatantly just terrible people. It would even, there was a couple times where they would paint KKK out on the highway in front of our house. It was just, and being a child, it was very hard to understand. And I used to talk to my mom and dad, why do grown people, do that to kids? And, and they were just, just some people just like that, But I got taught to, there are reasons why people do things like this. And you just had to deal with it. That was just one of the things you had to deal with. And there are, I got friends to this day. There are awesome friends who have helped me out and my family. So, but it was around the 1970s and 80s when it was real bad.
And so, so people would say things, they would throw things. There was some graffiti outside of your house. Was anyone in your family ever hurt?
Well, from fighting or something like that, that was a lot of that. Because, I mean, you have to defend yourself to a certain point. But you had to learn when to not to. Because, I mean, we're talking grown men and stuff, They could really hurt a child.
Yeah. That's so hard to think about that happening to children.
Yes.
Children just going to school.
Yes.
So you also said that there were some really good people who stepped in to help you. Could you speak to that? Maybe an experience or an instance where someone helped you?
Oh, yes. There's a number of times. I was in, as my brother, we used to pump gas at one of the stores and the drunk guys would come there, and they, of course, they would harass us, and he broke a bottle and saying he's going to cut me and stuff like that, and I'm terrified. I am, 10, 12 years old, and he got a grown man just broke a bottle finna cut me. And someone jumped in. I'm not going to name any names, but they know who they are. Thank you very much. And they stopped him from, and of course I ran. I went home, but and stuff like that, sometimes you just got to keep it in because you can't go tell your dad or your mother, see, because that's just going to build up. Because if someone did that to your child, you're going to be, you do something probably a little,
Yeah.
And then that's just going to, start a big war, for nothing. So I've had that, and I've had where, and I still got issues about where I got stopped at a restaurant. I mean, I just went in there to get something for my mother, and 3 guys, grown men, had me, and they had me holding me by my head, squeezing my head, and they were turning me around, and one of them was kicking me in the butt and calling me, you know, you know, the N-word. And I remember I was 7 years old. I remember that. I was 7 years old, terrified, because I was terrified for my mother, because she was in the car, but she couldn't see me. And so I had to kind of grab myself, get myself together, and she knew something was wrong, but I did not tell her. To this day, I haven't told my mother about that. And so I have an issue with people grabbing my head to this day.
I would guess so. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But someone stopped him. One of the store managers saw it and told him to leave me alone. And they were just having a good old time, just. But that was all the time. That just happened.
I think their definition of a good time and mine is different, for what it's worth. Could you speak at all to any experiences you may have had in school?
I had some real close friends in school. Now, there was always where it was black and white. It was separated like that. But I was a hard head. I played and I liked whoever I wanted to hang out with. So I kind of got it from both sides. My family, because some of the blacks didn't like it for me being me and hanging around people. Now I'd have conversations or arguments with other blacks about why I would hang out with a different race. So it was like a double-edged sword. You can't. I couldn't understand it really. It was very hard for me to get that. Where everybody just. You can't talk to somebody because of the color of their skin. It was crazy. But the school was pretty much like that. It was, you knew who you hung out with, but there was some of our friends that were like me, We hung out. It was a group of us, and we, white, black, and it was awesome. It made me feel, real good that it was like that.
So if you got some ribbing, some pushback from even members of your own family for that, did your friends get any from their families too?
Oh, yes. A lot of times we had to hide to go play. I couldn't go to somebody's house due to their parents, and they would tell me, look, my family, my mom and my dad do not want us to play with, blacks or whatever. So we had, with being kids don't, most of the time that stuff, racism is taught. I mean, that's taught into you. But I remember having to do that, sitting on the porch, just little things, To me, it was small stuff, but now as I think about it, it was really, really big stuff, that's systemic, but you just learn to hang with it. It sucks.
It does suck. And I guess I like that it's speaking to the resiliency of kids, in that as an adult, you always have a different rear view on it, especially now being a parent yourself, but also for you to make that choice of, well, I'm just going to be friends with who I'm friends with,
Yes.
And for your friends to do the same thing. So you don't live in the South anymore.
No.
What happened when you graduated high school, when you got to the age where it was time to kind of start thinking about leaving home?
I went to college there in my time for a couple of years. And then I just kind of worked around and traveled a little bit. Then I joined the military. That's where I met my wife in Germany. And we have two, my wife is, I'm in interracial relation with my wife. But we had to have a talk because she was naive. love each other. And I'm like, look, so you have to realize if we get married, things are going to change for you too. And she was just like a deer in the headlights. She looked just like, what do you mean? And I had to literally just put it down to, look, we can't go shopping, car shopping and stuff like that. When we bought the house, she went by herself, first for the initial. That's stuff you have to talk about. You have to get that right because it's a problem. Even when we go to stores or get stopped, by the cops. That's happened. And it's a difference. There's a difference. She can sell. She can see it. She can see when we go to the store. It's different.
But she said, I'll take that on.
Yes.
And you guys did get married.
Yes, ma'am.
You
Yes,
did
we
get
did.
married. So,
Yeah.
so you've spoken to some of those experiences of, going out and feeling it differently, being treated differently. You have two sons. You and Lisa do.
Yeah, me and Lisa have two sons, and I have a son out of Willard. My oldest son, he lives in Atlanta right now. But me and my wife, we have two kids, two sons, they're 12 and 10 years old.
So I, as a parent, would really like to hear about your experience as a parent. Because it would be naive of me to think that our experiences as parents are the same.
Well, we had to really I had to talk to my kids, that's like my dad talked with me and my brothers and sisters about things that people will say, that people will do, so they'll be prepared for things. When you get stopped by a cop, it's different out there. Or someone looks at you, or you spend the night. You have to talk to your kids. I have to educate them about how the world, how the society is right now. And of course, the kids, they really just kind of don't get it, and it's not as bad as it was when I was, their age. And it is improving, but they have to be prepared for growing up, half black and half white.
And I don't know your oldest son, but I can tell you that I think both of your boys have listened to you because the first time I asked Marcus a question and he didn't hear me and he said, ma'am, the manners on your boys are just unbelievable. So I think they listen to you. And
yeah. They're good kids. Now, they don't understand the whole that racial tension stuff, but especially now, they can see it. They ain't, kids are a lot smarter than we think they are. And when anything comes on the news or something, it's always something bad. And especially with all this, the rioting and the police brutality, and my brother's a state trooper. Sorry, Dion, but and he sees it. And I love cops. I'm not hating cops. There's great cops out there, but there's some rough ones out there, and some that don't need to be cops. It's not all of them, but there's some. I guarantee you, there's some.
For sure. And I would just walk back to your marriage with your wife Lisa, who's just a lovely lady. I'm fortunate to know her too. Have there been any experiences that you could point to specifically that the two of you have had to navigate that you'd like to speak to?
Well, usually it's at a store, or when we go out to eat. Sometimes you get the looks, and they ain't good looks. There's a certain type of look that you get sometimes, and it's all too familiar to me, and unless she just throws it on like it ain't nothing, but she will, sometimes she'll say something about somebody looking in a store, especially stores. They follow you. I get it. It doesn't bother me. I don't get upset about it. But usually it's something, you know, you can get, just don't say nothing, just let it go.
But I don't always get followed in a store, Dale. I don't. Um, Anything else you want to share with us right now?
Let me see.
And it's okay, because I'm going to bring you back up here for questions. So if you think of something else.
Okay, all right. I just want to thank all my, you know, the great white friends that I have, and some of the greatest people that I've met, and to thank them for helping my family through some difficult times. And I mean, it breaks my heart. You know, I can almost cry right now because some of them, I mean, it's amazing what they went through to help us. Because when you help, in my situation, my family situation, when you help us or you defend us, you're going to get it just as bad as I'm going to get it. It may not be that day, but you're going to probably get it. I mean, I know you're going to get it because I've seen it, you know, and it just, and you just want to hug them, and I still do it. Like when I see them, you know, it's a feeling that you know just never. It makes you want to cry every time you see them. You know.
Well, that brings out the best of humanity. I think that story does. So.
Always, and it's always good. It's always good. That's what my mother and grandma used to say. It's always good. You know, just and to pray for them. That took me a while to do. I could not. That was something that was very hard for me to do. Was to forgive people. You know, it was very difficult.
I think a lot of people can relate to that being difficult, for sure, for sure. All right. Well, we are going to swap speakers here. So those of you who are attending virtually, give us a moment, and we're going to swap some seats around here. So we'll be right back. Watch your step over there, Dale. All right, come on up. I did flip that off, so you'll want to turn it on. Little button on. There we go. There we go. All right, so thank you, Dale, for sitting up here with me and having a conversation. And I am happy now to welcome to our conversation Corey Aussem-Woltering, who is fresh off of a trip. And I think he can start off by telling us a little bit about himself.
Yeah, so my name is Corey Aussem-Woltering, 30 years old, born and raised in Ottawa, Illinois. I don't know what else to say.
That's all right. I'm here to help with that a little bit. So Corey, let's start with the fact that you are a local. You're native to Ottawa. So do you want to tell us a little bit about growing up in Ottawa, about your family, about school, some of that?
Yeah. So I was adopted into a white family. So I think that my experience has probably been a little bit different than others around here. Grew up in the Ottawa school system, made great friends with people, and I guess for me that's really all I kind of knew. Ottawa wasn't necessarily the most diverse place as I was growing up, but because that's what I was born into and that's what I always saw, I just thought it was kind of normal. And so, like, the friends that I made and everything like that, it wasn't like, oh, you know, this is my black friend Corey. It was just like, oh, this is my friend Corey. Like, and so maybe that's because I made a lot of great friends, or maybe it's just because, I mean, I was a very loud kid, so you were going to know who I was. And so I don't know. I guess that could have been part of it, but like for the most part, everybody was extremely friendly to me growing up.
So Dale talked to us a little bit about his parents having conversations with him about getting that thick skin, when to walk away, how to keep himself safe, essentially. So if, again, you're living in a community that's not as diverse, but also having parents who are white, did they have those same conversations with you?
Yeah, we definitely still had those same conversations and had to think about different situations and how things could be. But a lot of the times, if I had an issue or whatever, my friends would be people sticking up for me as well. So, like, I really don't think I had it that tough growing up here.
Well, I'm glad for that. Glad for that with you. And you didn't have any issues in terms of your friends' parents or anything like that?
Same with the friends' parents.
You picked
like-
good friends.
Yeah, good friends that had good parents, I guess, because I really don't think there was ever a issue with it, or at least not that I knew of.
Okay. Ottawa High School, what same kind of experience there as in your younger years? No issues, or were there any experiences you had there that kind of stuck out in your mind? And I asked that question only because I have asked my own kids if their friends talk about race or talk about, conversations they have with their parents or situations that come up with their parents. And I have a 12-year-old and I have a 15-year-old, and I asked my 12-year-old specifically, and he's like, no. And my husband pointed out, I don't think we talked about that stuff when we were 12, right? Like Dale said, like they just want to play. They just want to go like hang out and do their thing. But maybe by the time they're in high school and college, those things become things they start talking about more.
Yeah, even in high school, I mean, I hung out with a lot of the same friends that I hung out with from younger years, so I think it all just kind of carried over. And yeah, I don't know, like, I can't really think of any specific incidents or, like, major issues, really.
Good. So you graduate high school,
Yep.
and then where do you head from there?
So then I went to Greenville College in Southern Illinois. It's a private Christian college of about 800 students, and that was like the first time I had been in a situation where the school is probably maybe 40% African American, 10% Asian, and like 50% white. So that kind of opened up my eyes to like, whoa, Ottawa was not that diverse compared to now this college campus. Overall, I'd say it was a good experience, but that was like the first time there's ever any sort of like racial tension that I can really remember, and just a few different incidents with that.
So, like, what brought the tension to your attention, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so a lot of it was actually around the 2016 election. Well, 2012 and 2012, yeah, not 2016, 2012. And it was just a very interesting dynamic of being on a Christian campus, but yet people were not thrilled about the idea of having a black president. And then with that, one of the things was like people are like, oh, well, if you voted for him, you only voted for him because he looks like you, or you only voted for him because you're going to vote for another brother. And I'm like, I didn't say that I voted for him, or I didn't say I didn't, but the thing is, like, that's not something you say to someone. Like, your politics are your politics.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there's stuff like that. And then I remember on election night, there's like a group of people chanting like, my president is black, but then there's another group of people chanting KKK, and this is on a college campus.
Right. I read into that people who should know better, right? All right.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was just one of those interesting experiences for me because, I mean, it's only, 3.5 hours south of Ottawa, Illinois, where Ottawa, even though it wasn't the most diverse growing up, it still kind of felt like this little bubble, I guess. And then here I am on a college campus of 800 students in a town of like 4,000 people, and I'm like, whoa, like, why is this all happening?
Sure. So then from college on to...
Then I moved to Colorado for a while, wanted to become a professional triathlete, which is also very interesting, being one of the only African Americans that was in the sport of triathlon, but also performing at an extremely high level. Like by the time I was done with college, I had qualified for the World Championships twice, and at Worlds, I think I was one of maybe 3 black people I saw there every year.
And I'm sorry, this is the World Championship.
Yeah.
One of 3 people of color.
Yeah, there's some Asians also, and
Sure.
probably some Mexicans, but like honestly, like 3 black people at the World Championships.
Wow. Okay.
So it was just kind of funny because it's like, whoa, like the sport is also extremely white, and nothing wrong with that. That's just what it is. And so like the first World Championships were in Vegas, the second were in Canada, and I remember traveling to Canada and like people are just staring at me because they're like, whoa, like what's this black dude doing here? And it was like part of it's worlds, part of it's Canada, and I just thought it was kind of funny. Like for me, it was more like not necessarily like a racial thing, I don't think, but more of like a curiosity on their part, or at least that's what I like to think it was.
So I have to make a leap here and assume that the confidence that you speak to having had as a child, everybody knew who you were. um, has that helped when you find yourself in those situations where you're performing at that high level? There's expectation that you put on yourself and other people put on you, but you find yourself in those situations where you might be one of just a few people, black people around. That confidence has helped?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that goes back to childhood, whether it's, you know, playing sports as a kid, being in band as a kid, being on speech team as a kid, fine arts club, just all these different things that I was doing. A lot of times I was one of the only people that looked like me that was doing some of these sports, whether it was, you know, swimming or even cheerleading. And I was totally fine with that because, like, when I do something, I just want to be the best at what I'm doing. And so I think there's a large part of confidence that comes from that now helps with these different situations. So like after triathlon, I actually switched to trail running, and I'm now running for the North Face, which is extremely funny because in trail running there are very few people of color that are doing it at a high level, let alone just in general. So once again, I'm going into a sport that's extremely white. And it's just really funny going to some of these races where before people kind of knew who I was, they're just like, oh, like, what's this kid doing on the start line? Like, who does he think he is? And then I'd show up and win. And so, and people are like, oh, now I know him.
Yeah. So speak a little bit more about your trail running experiences, if you don't mind. And I want to come to this because I don't know if you all remember, Corey ran every street in Ottawa to raise money for local frontline workers and to support local businesses. He and his husband Tom did this in an effort, to help in this current situation. He ran every street in Ottawa. You've run every street in Ottawa, but you've run lots of other places too.
Yeah.
So could you speak to any experiences you have, whether safety's been a concern, whether interference of other people has been a concern, anything like that?
Yeah. So with the North Face, I've now been able to travel a lot more for racing. So like even before that, I've been to 46 states in the country. So like I've been quite a few places here in the States, but then last year I was in 11 different countries for racing, training, and just getting out. And for the most part, it has been a positive experience. Last year we were in Hong Kong, and it was funny because like there are not a lot of black people in Hong Kong, and people stare, and totally fine. Once again, I think it's just a curiosity thing of why people are staring. But I remember walking down the street as I was coming back from Starbucks, getting ready to head to the beach, and my friends were there, and Tom was already at the beach with them. I'm just walking down the street carrying my drink, and I got stopped by the Hong Kong police because they're like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? How long are you here? All this stuff. And it wasn't just one police officer, it was like 6 or 7. And so it was just an extremely odd situation because I'm in a country that, I hadn't been in before. And normally that doesn't happen, but because I stuck out, that is how I got stopped. It ended up being fine, but my friends are all at the beach, Tom was at the beach, and everyone's like, where is he? Like, how come it's taking so long to go to Starbucks? And I'm just like, okay, like, I'll just be polite and hopefully I get out of this situation. And then, Argentina was the other country where it was like a little bit iffy, and that's only because like Argentinians tend to look down on people that are darker than they are. So like one issue I've noticed was as you're walking down the street, if someone thinks that you're in their space and they want you to move, they'll just continue to walk at you, and they'll even go as far as bumping into you because they think you should move. But you know, I'm extremely stubborn, so like I'll just bump right back into him. I'm like, sorry, like you should have moved. Like I was walking in this line first. As it comes to racing, though, I don't think there's been any interference of like people having an issue with me winning or trying to like sabotage my races or anything like that.
Good, good. Are there places that you don't feel safe running? I know that might be a little bit of a loaded question.
No, I mean, I will go race in most places. So there are a couple of races that I'd like to do in a couple countries where it's actually illegal to be gay. And so like that brings up a completely other issue. So then it's like I'm the openly gay black dude that could potentially be going and racing in these countries. And I'm actually fine with that, just because I'd like to do that race, but I also think that representation does matter, and like with the platform I've been given with the North Face, I think that it's something that has to be done at times.
I'll save the question for how your husband feels about that for him.
Yeah. Yeah, good choice.
So, if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about your husband, because Dale spoke with us about the fact that he is married to Lisa, who is white.
Yep.
You are married to Tom, who is also white.
Yeah.
You guys do have kind of that intersectionality of being a same gender loving couple. Have you guys experienced anything related to race around your marriage? It might be hard to separate all of it because, you know, you are who you are,
Yep.
and Tom is who he is. But
Yep. I don't know that we've had a ton of issues with it, or at least if there are, they're usually not brought to me. They'd be brought to him, or like they're just not said to us, usually. But then, yes, like sometimes when we're racing in some smaller towns, whether it's in the south or maybe even the East Coast a little bit, we'll get looks when we go places, or just people might make a comment every once in a while, and it's just, for me, it's really easy to let that stuff go, because I see enough of it at times that it really doesn't bother me, and I also know that it's not my issue, it's their issue, so I'm okay with that, but he's not one to let it go as easily just because he feels like he needs to stick up for me, which I can stick up for myself.
all right. Any other experiences that you want to talk about, or anything else that comes to mind that you've encountered?
So I just ran the full Ice Age Trail up in Wisconsin, so it's a bit over 1,100 miles, and
You heard that right. 1,100 miles he ran. Go ahead.
and I finished in 21 days, 13 hours, and 35 minutes for the new record on the trail. So thank you. But the interesting thing about that was I started on June 1st, and the George Floyd incident happened like 3 or 4 days before this started. And so we were going up to small town Wisconsin, north, about an hour north of Minneapolis, and the trail starts on Wisconsin-Minnesota border, and then basically heads north and northeast for about 350 miles before it finally makes a turn to head south towards Madison and all of that. So as we're going up there to a bunch of basically small towns being on the trail, we weren't quite sure what the situation was going to be, and it was just something we kind of had to think about because we had 2 black people and 2 white people that were on the crew, and because of COVID, you know, we couldn't camp, so we had to get hotels, which meant that we had to actually go into all these small towns, and so like we just had no idea really what to expect. And I just would like to say that we had a great experience up north. We didn't have any issues. People are great. People are very helpful. People are kind. And so like that was at least just one thing where I'm like, there's still a lot of good left in the world. And so I know that people get like so focused on the negative sometimes, and like that was just a really positive experience.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That brings me hope too. So, I think, unless there's anything else specific you would like to speak to, I'll actually bring Dale back up here. I know Pastor had a question that she posed to me that I will pose to both of you. And then if we have any questions, if for those of you who are on Zoom at home, there's a chat feature. And you can send your questions into the chat, and then Pastor and Dee can maybe help me with those. Dale, I'll have you come sit in my seat. And just so you guys know, this microphone is going to the Zoom audience, and that one is just going to this one.
Okay.
So if you can talk loud enough for these people to hear you, you can just kind of pass that one back and forth between the two of you if you want. And I'm going to pull this up, unless you want to read the question yourself, the one that you texted. But now I've got to find it. See, it would have been better for me to pull it up. Okay. I am going to do this so people can hear me at home. All right, so Pastor's question says, as a white person, I grew up never thinking about my whiteness. It was normative for me, and in my community and the world I inhabit still is in many ways. I was in my 50s before I really became aware of what my whiteness, of my whiteness and what it means. When and how did you first become aware of being black, and what did that mean to you and for you?
Okay. Well, for me, it was very early in my life, you know, especially where I grew up and the atmosphere where I grew up at. And, I mean, I'm talking about elementary school.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick, Dale.
Okay.
You couldn't hear me, or they couldn't hear me. Oh, I'm sorry. So never mind. I'll do this.
Okay. Okay. For me, it was at a very, very early age, like, because you got called names. I mean, I got called names, and my family did, leaving the house, going to school every day. And I remember asking my mom, you know, why are they throwing rocks and calling us names? And she, you know, a mother's way, you know, gave me a hug and all of us, and she just said that there was just people that's just mean, and that's the way they are. And she brought up the whole praying again, pray for them. You know, but for me it was very, very. So I'm talking, you know, elementary school, kindergarten. That's how I knew something was. I was different, you know.
Yeah. I guess for me, I was aware that I was black from an early age, just because, you know, my parents did have the talk with me also. But I don't think I really knew what it meant to be black and growing up at that time, just because it was like I was just me. And so, like, as I said earlier, like, luckily I was treated like, hey, you know, that's just Corey. And so I guess I don't think I fully realized it till probably like college almost.
You can hear it. So the question from one of our audience members is, did your parents teach you how to be black in the world, and what was that like? What was that conversation like?
Yes, my father and mother, you know, they explained to me what to do. You know, and for a child to be hearing things about how to stay safe from mean people, it was kind of like, you know, you got a lot of questions. And I would always ask, well, why would they want to do that? I didn't do nothing to them. Or, you know, and you know, this type of things that he would go over with me is, if you get stopped, you know, don't get caught out, you know, by yourself, you know, with some friends, even friends. My dad, you know, we could not, you know, trust a lot of people. And that's what it was about, you know, a lot of, You know, you couldn't go like out in the woods or to the river with your friends, because you know it was just scary. And if you got stopped by, you know, as I got older, you know, he would explain, when you get stopped by the cop, you always have your hand on the steering wheel. You do not reach for nothing, you know. And that has, and even though you do that, I've been roughed up big time by cops. But it could have, you know, but you just take it. He taught me to not fight and to live for another day. You know, just take it. You know, you get embarrassed, you know, you get, you know, called terrible names. You just say, yes, officer, yes, officer. And that has helped me out a lot, because there's some bad situations where I've had a weapon pulled on me. And you just, if you mess up and you do the wrong thing, you're going to probably get yourself shot. You know, so, I mean, I'm talking about for nothing. You know, so there are some bad people out there, but that's how my father, and they sent me down, I mean, and they explained to all my brothers and sisters, went through all this, you know, how to act, what to do when you see this. You know, I'm very vigilant. I'm still vigilant to this day, and try not to get myself caught up in situations because my friends and stuff have gotten beat up because they did something wrong. I mean, well, where they considered something wrong, you know, where they don't have their hands up here. If you reaching over, I mean, simple stuff that y'all don't think about, where you getting your ID or you something, you better not reach for it. Don't reach for it until he asks you to give it to you. And then you see him, you go, I'm gonna, and you repeat him, repeat. I'm reaching for my registration right now. And that's how you have to do it. You know, because I've had a gun in my head, and that's the most scariest thing in the world. And all because I did not do one of the things my dad told me: wait till he tells you to go get something. And I can get it now. I understand. You know, he's a cop. You know, he's probably scared or whatever. But I'm in high school. You know, and it just really, really stuck with me forever. So now I still practice that to this day, and I tell my kids the same way, same thing. Be vigilant. Don't get caught up in situations, and you better know who you're hanging out with. You know.
Yeah, my parents were more just like, be a good person. And it's interesting growing up here where, like, I guess I really didn't get out a ton before probably college. So, like, this is kind of the bubble I knew, and luckily people knew me here, and, like, even the cops knew who I was here, and, like, even just, like, I was a kid that played sports, you know, and so for me, I don't know that was, like, a super big concern until I finally started to travel a lot more. But then all of a sudden it's like I go from leaving the country once in my first 20 something years of life to 11 countries in a year. So it's like learning everything from all over, and then also realizing, oh, like, we also have, you know, a huge problem here, and trying to learn how to deal with things here in America along with any other country I go to, and, like, what their laws are, what their rules are. And but yeah, so it's just kind of been like a learning experience all over, all at once, I guess.
There we go. Well, and I would just add to that, you know, Corey, I've heard you speak to understanding that you have a platform from which you example and try to, just by being who you are, unapologetically you, set a tone that can help spur people towards newer ways of thinking. And Dale, you're talking about the conversations you have with your boys, and like I said, I can attest to those boys and their character and how wonderful they are. So you're doing that in your way too. We have a question from one of our virtual attendees. And this is a tricky one, so if you don't have an answer for it, that's okay. But he would like to know, as we look towards doing more amplifying of voices, but also thinking about that ACT piece, um, what, what would you like to see from local communities? And again, sit with that, think on it. If there's something that comes to mind, you can speak to it. Anyone else at home who still has a question, you can put it in the chat feature. If you're on a computer, that's at the very bottom of your screen. While our panelists here are thinking, from one of our viewers at home, she says, I just want to say Dale Baker is one of the best men I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. He has coached my son since he was in T-ball. There's nobody that would give you the shirt off their own back like Dale Baker. Thank you, Dale. The Ingrams love you and appreciate you. I'm going to set those there. If you have something, you're welcome to. I'm still thinking about what we like our local communities to be doing.
Well, this is a start right here. It's just communicating. Because a lot of people don't want to talk about it for whatever reason. But this is right here is what you need to do. Is you don't need a lot of people, just one-on-one, whatever. You got questions to ask before, and quit judging people. And I've been bad. I've been bad about it too. I've done it. I've found myself. I've seen a group of white men, and I literally judged them. I've done it, and it was wrong. And found out those guys still some of my best friends to this day. But I've literally just quit judging people. That's all. I mean, and having conversations about race relationships, and it's amazing what you can find out about people.
And this is also coming from one of our participants at home. She is the mom of some white little girls, and as she reflects on the area in which we live, it's just not very diverse, which Corey, you spoke to. And wondering a little out loud, not that you two have to have an answer to this, but I think it also speaks to the question of what we'd like to see in local communities is how can we start to think about ways of breaking out of the white spaces that we inhabit so that we put ourselves deliberately in more diverse situations. And when you live in a town that's just small, it's hard to do. And the first thing that comes to my mind is that we're limited right now because of the health concerns of COVID-19, but we don't have to go far to find diverse communities around. So anyway, I did want to share that from one of our participants at home. If there's anything you'd like to speak to on that, you're certainly welcome to, but you don't have to have an answer to that for us. But any other questions from anyone here in person? Okay. Well, I would like to thank you both for taking the time to be here, for being open to sharing who you are with us, and for being a voice that we could amplify today. So thank you very much. And thank you everybody at home for participating, and those of you who came here today for coming and listening. Thank you.
Thank you.